The individual who made the choice to remain at Chernobyl is going to be the topic of discussion in the next video. The Chernobyl accident was brought about when technicians working in Nuclear Reactor Unit 4 performed an experiment that was inadequately planned. They disabled the power regulating system and the emergency safety systems of the reactor, removed the control rods from the core of the reactor, and then allowed the reactor to continue operating at 7% of its maximum power. Before we continue, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any future updates. The Chernobyl accident occurred in 1986 at the Chernobyl nuclear power facility in the Soviet Union. It was the most catastrophic event in the annals of nuclear power generation at the time. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was located in the community of Pripyat, which is approximately 16 kilometers to the northwest of the city of Chernobyl, also spelled Chernobyl in Ukrainian, and 104 kilometers to the north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. The station featured 4 reactors, each of which was able to generate 1,000 megawatts of electrical power. It had been operational between the years 1977 and 1983. On April 25 and 26, 1986, workers working in Reactor Unit 4 performed an experiment that had been badly designed. This led to the accident that transpired. The majority of the control rods were removed from the reactor's core, and its power regulating system and emergency safety systems were both disabled by the workers. Despite these changes, the reactor was allowed to continue operating at 7% of its full capacity. These errors were compounded by the actions of others, and at 1:23 in the morning on April 26, the chain reaction in the core became uncontrollable. A series of explosions caused a tremendous fireball to be released, which then blew the heavy cover made of concrete and steel off the reactor. This, together with the subsequent fire that broke out in the graphite reactor core, resulted in the discharge of a significant quantity of radioactive material into the atmosphere, where it was carried over a considerable distance by air currents. In addition to that, the core underwent partial melting. On April 27, the evacuation of Pripyat, which had a population of 30,000 people, began. On April 28, Swedish monitoring stations revealed abnormally high levels of wind-transported radiation and demanded an explanation, despite the fact that a cover-up had been attempted. The administration of the Soviet Union recognized that there had been an accident at Chernobyl, which resulted in an uproar from people all over the world concerning the dangers posed by the radioactive emissions. By the 4th of May, it had managed to contain both the heat and the radiation that had been pouring from the reactor core, albeit at the expense of the safety of the personnel. Approximately 800 temporary burial sites were used to dispose of radioactive waste, and in that same year, the highly radioactive reactor core was encased in a sarcophagus made of concrete and steel, which was later deemed structurally unsound. After the accident, the Soviet Union established a no-go zone in the form of a circular exclusion zone with a radius of approximately 18.6 miles, 30 kilometers, with the center of the zone being the nuclear power plant. Around the plant was an area that was designated as an exclusion zone that was approximately 1,017 square miles, 2,634 square kilometers, in size. However, in order to accommodate severely radiated areas that were located outside the first zone, it was subsequently increased to a total area of 1,600 square miles, 4,143 square kilometers. Even though there are no permanent residents in the exclusion zone, individuals such as researchers, scavengers, and others may apply for permits that will allow them to access the zone for specified periods of time. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine took ownership of the facility, which had previously been under Soviet administration. Chernobyl and the abandoned settlement of Pripyat became popular destinations for so-called dark tourists after the Ukrainian government opened parts of the exclusion zone to organize tour groups in 2011. After a swift but intense struggle, Russian forces that had invaded Ukraine from Belarus in 2022 were able to seize control of Chernobyl. This took place during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Concerns were raised regarding the risk of damage to the containment structure as well as widespread radioactive contamination as a result of the conflict that took place at the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. Cosmic rays and the gaseous diffusion of radon from natural uranium and thorium found in the Earth's crust are primarily responsible for the vast majority of the naturally occurring radioactivity found in the atmosphere. Both the distribution of uranium and thorium in the Earth and the conditions of the atmosphere have a significant impact on the local concentrations of these gases in the atmosphere. These concentrations also rely on the weather. Radiant versions of carbon and hydrogen are two of the isotopes that are created when cosmic rays interact with matter. When nuclear weapons detonate, they send radioactivity into the atmosphere, which results in three distinct forms of fallout: local, tropospheric, and stratospheric fallout. The fallout that occurred locally was caused by the deposition of bigger radioactive particles in the area surrounding the explosion site. This repercussion has a significant impact, although its aftereffects won't last very long. The term tropospheric fallout refers to the phenomenon that takes place when finer particles enter the troposphere, the lower part of the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth, and are deposited at a later time and over a larger area, with the specifics varying according to the weather patterns in the area. In most cases, the tropospheric fallout will take place 1 month after the explosion and will take place at the same approximate latitude as the location of the explosion. It is possible for stratospheric fallout, which consists of extremely small particles in the stratosphere, above the troposphere, to continue for years after the explosion, and its distribution is almost entirely global. In most cases, only massive nuclear weapons are capable of producing considerable amounts of fallout in the stratosphere. During the detonation of a nuclear weapon, a wide variety of radioactive isotopes are produced. However, only the long-lived isotopes are deposited as fallout in the stratosphere. Cesium-137 and strontium-90 are two examples of radioactive elements that have half-lives of 27 and 28 years, respectively. The latter poses a higher threat to animal life due to the fact that it is chemically similar to calcium, can substitute calcium in certain meals, and can ultimately become concentrated in the body. These properties make it particularly dangerous to animals. The radioactive material that is found in the stratosphere will eventually combine with the radioactive material that is found in the troposphere. From there, the radioactive material will either fall to Earth as a result of electrical attraction, gravity, or attachment to larger particles such as water droplets. Ivan Shamyonok, who is now 90 years old, claims that the key to living a long life is to never leave the location where you were born, even if that place is a village in Belarus that was contaminated with radioactive fallout after a nuclear disaster. On April 26, 1986, a nuclear plant in Chernobyl, Ukraine, which was a Soviet republic at the time, experienced a malfunction during a test that caused clouds of smoldering nuclear material to spread across large portions of Europe. As a result, more than 100,000 people were required to evacuate an exclusion zone that stretched across the border between Ukraine and Belarus. The town of Tulgovik, which belongs to Shamyonok, is located on the outskirts of the zone, which covers an area that is comparable in size to that of Luxembourg. However, he and his wife rejected the offer to transfer, and neither of them ever experienced any adverse consequences as a result of the radiation. So far, so good. Yesterday, the physicians came in, helped me onto the bed, and proceeded to check and measure me. They assured him, "Granddad, everything is going to be all right," Shamyonok stated. This was the home that my sister shared with her husband. They made the decision to flee, and it wasn't long before they were underground. They succumbed to their fear and perished. I don't suffer from anxiety. I sing a little bit, take a stroll around the yard, take things slowly like this, and I continue to live, he remarked. The approaching 30th anniversary of the tragedy has shed new light on the long-term effects the most catastrophic nuclear meltdown in history has had on the lives of individuals. The official death toll from the disaster in the immediate term was 31, but a much higher number of people passed away as a result of radiation-related illnesses such as cancer. The total number of fatalities and the consequences on people's health over the long term is still being hotly debated. According to Shamyonok, life didn't change all that much after the meltdown at Chernobyl, which is considered to be the worst nuclear disaster in the world. He and his family continued to eat meat, milk, and eggs from the cows, pigs, and chickens that they had in their backyard. They also continued to eat vegetables and fruit that were grown in their own backyard. After the passing of his wife and the departure of their children, the only persons remaining in the village are he and his nephew, who resides on the opposite side of the community. Will there be a migration back? They won't be back, that much is certain. Those individuals who desired to have already passed away. Shamyanok leads a secluded and unassuming life. When the national song is played on the radio at 6 in the morning, he gets out of bed, starts his cast iron stove to heat his food, and then feeds his pigs, his dog, and his other animal. The community is serviced twice weekly by a mobile shop that is run out of the trunk of a car, and on Saturdays Shamyanok's granddaughter visits to prepare meals for the week and clean his home. He claims that he does not have any health issues, but he does occasionally take medication and drinks a tiny glass of vodka before meals to boost the appetite. What are your thoughts on the video we just showed you? Please share your thoughts with us in the comment area below. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to continue receiving communication from us in the future.